All right, this is the episode of 81.2, and for anyone just joining us, welcome. We're going to be talking about, this is the Easter special, since today is Easter while we're recording, and for most of you it'll be fresh on your mind when you listen to the episode, and we're talking about death mechanics, since that's kind of the reason for this season? Resurrection, breaking death.
Easter theme. So
Yeah.
I first started thinking about this when I saw this YouTube video it's called The Death and Return of Superman, and I'd seen it like a couple of years ago, but one of our fans posted it on our site, and so I rewatched it. Did you see it?
Yeah, that was cool. That was good revisiting that.
Yeah. So basically, the gist of it is they're talking about Superman as a character, and DC realized that Superman was kind of boring as a concept because his whole thing is he's the best at everything and he can't be hurt except by kryptonite, and then he's weak, useless. And so they're trying to find a way to make him interesting again, and then they were like, what we have to do? We have to kill Superman.
Well, I think with Superman they painted themselves in a corner because they got to the point where fans wouldn't believe him being defeated. It was like it's like the age-old Superman versus Hulk fight, like who would win? Because Hulk, the whole thing about him is if he gets mad enough, he can do anything, right? And Superman supposedly holds back in every fight. So nobody wants to believe if Superman gets beaten. You always think he must surely there's he was holding back just a little and could have hit a little harder. He'd fly around the Earth 16 times and really build up speed then punch. You're in this place where the audience is not willing to suspend disbelief of an outcome. You know what I mean? So I think they did kind of screw themselves there.
Yeah. So what they did is they killed Superman through this convoluted super baby that gets stronger every time it dies until it became unbeatable, called Doomsday.
Doomsday? Yeah.
Yeah. And so, they Doomsday and Superman punch each other so hard that, Superman beats Doomsday, but he dies. And it was like this huge thing, it was in the news, everybody was talking about, oh my god, Superman's dead. Suddenly everybody was buying Superman comics again because it was amazing. They killed Superman. It was like the unkillable man had been killed.
Yeah.
And then he came back. Turned out he wasn't dead. He was just in a Kryptonian healing coma that happens. It looks just like being dead, but you're not dead, and then you come back to life.
Yeah, this guy in this video says it's because their sales shot up, and they were like, well, shit. Superman comics went crazy, and everything else is still pretty dead, so we kind of have to keep selling Superman comics. Without Superman, that's impossible. Let's bring him back.
So he came back from the dead, and he started this trend of comic book characters not staying dead. Captain America died, he's back. The Flash died, he's back. Bruce Wayne died, he's back. Until it became a cliche to where the point, someone made a law that said the only people in comics who stay dead are Ben Parker.
Yeah. Uncle Ben. Tragic history.
If your death is integral to the hero's tragic backstory. Bruce Wayne's parents aren't coming back. Ben Parker's not coming back. Everyone else, they're dead. They're gonna come back. To the point where Donatello died, and I'm like, yeah, he'll be back.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know if you know this. Spider-Man's parents, he showed up. I don't know if they actually weren't dead.
Oh yeah, of course not. No one stays dead in comics.
They showed up as and they were like CIA. They worked with the government, and they're like, we could never reveal ourselves to you because
they just fake their own deaths.
Yeah, what the hell? Come on. I'm a huge Spider-Man fan. It's hard to piss me off it from the original content. Yes, if you make a movie where Venom is Topher Grace, yeah, I'm gonna get upset. But if it's original content from the writers and they write something in, I'm typically yeah, whatever, man, it's awesome. I love it. I'm a fanboy, But that was crap.
Peter Parker died when Dr. Octopus took over his body and became Superior Spider-Man. Now he's back. Even Gwen Stacy came back. In the crossover event, she's Spider-Gwen.
But I don't know if I'm just stuck on Peter Parker, but they brought the now there's a black kid that's Spider-Man, and
Miles Morales. That's in the Ultimate Spider-Man.
I could not remember his name, but yeah,
Miles Morales.
It's so hard for me. I'm not racist. I love
So my best friends are black superheroes.
Yeah. No, Lucas Cage. I think he was pretty cool. He was really poorly thought out back in the day. Yeah, Falcon. I don't actually like Falcon for the most part, but I don't like a lot of the Captain America dudes anyway. I hate Bucky. He's a douche. I wish he
Bucky
wasn't.
Bucky came back. He was supposed to be one of the people who's always
Oh,
dead.
that's right. Yeah.
Yep.
But I can't get behind it. Spider-Man was as Peter Parker was such an integral part of my childhood. Like I had the pajamas, the underoos, the socks, curtains. It was
Mhm.
Spider-Man and Star Wars, man. And so like that'd be like making like Luke Skywalker like Indian or something. I have nothing against Indian people. I think they're very interesting, but I just can't do it. Like to me, he's that white little farm boy kid with like the stupid like chin and the a 70s hairstyle. Like if you took any of those things away, I'd feel sad.
Well,
It's
he's
like a highly
still
specific memory.
the mainline Spider-Man. Still Peter Parker. It's just the ultimate version is Miles.
Well, and I like the thing. We do need more like people of color in being the protagonists and not fucking typecast. Same thing with women. I get it. I'm all for it. But like, man, but Spider-Man, that'd be like Superman changing. It's insane. Like
Well,
I'm even behind the.
Captain America is black now, isn't he?
Yeah, that's fine too. Like Falcon took over, right? Isn't that the idea?
Yeah, he like took over
Yeah.
the mantle.
Well, that's awesome. Yeah, it represents America. So it's like, oh,
Yeah,
good for you. Yeah, that's a
we got a
great move.
female Thor now. Like they're changing up the face of it.
I like that, but man, something about Spider-Man, like I get, you know what it is? I think I know what it is, because like whenever I was a kid, I got picked on, right? Because I was a little nerd, and I think that was it. I just really identified with that Peter Parker
Yeah.
getting picked on.
But now
Looking,
like little black nerds can have a role model that they can self-identify with.
yeah, I mean, that's true. I just, man, you mess with my Spider-Man. That's like rewriting Chrono Trigger as like, I don't know, as furry animals or something. I would just freak out.
Yeah.
I'd be like, I can't do it. Great, furry animals are awesome, but I
Can't have
can't.
anthropomorphic animals in Chrono Trigger. That frog. Oh shoot.
Shut up. No, I mean like Kronos or something, or Chrono, one of the main dudes.
Speaking of that, that's what got me thinking. If death is broken in comics, is it broken in video games? I started thinking about characters where or games where the protagonist dies, and the first one I thought of was Chrono Trigger. Like, remember how much that rocked your world when spoiler alert for a 20-year-old game, when Lavos just disintegrates you with his beam, you just die. And it's super sad. And then time travel. You get back to that point in history. You replace Chrono with like a look-alike. And bam, he's back to life again. Chrono Trigger, the Jesus archetype. Chrono has been reincarnated. He's back. He's been resurrected. And I was like, oh, shoot, that did happen. What about other games? Mass Effect, Commander Shepard, you get blown apart. You're dead. Oh, just kidding. They've rebuilt you. They've made you bigger, faster, stronger than you were before. And I realized that coming back from the dead has been a video game trope for a long time, too. The concept of the one-up, the extra life. It's you're always dying and coming back. That's how you learn from your mistakes. But to make it such an integral part of the plot, like it's actually not that uncommon.
The only person who doesn't die in video games is Prince of Persia, because in the Sands of Time, because you just don't die. You rewind it, which is a similar mechanic. You screw up and you get a chance to redo it. But
yeah. So I was thinking one of the things that really separates death in older games compared to newer ones is death used to have repercussions. Remember when you died and you had to start the level over, or God forbid, start the whole game over because you ran out of continues?
Yes.
Or you were playing a game that didn't have continues, it was just game over?
Yeah.
And I first noticed this in modern games when I was playing Bioshock, the first one. Speaking of games where the protagonist dies, there's 2 different Bioshock games where the hero dies. But the very first one I was playing, and I die. I'd be in a boss fight, and I died, and it respawns you at the little cloning facility or whatever. Those little like tubes. And you lose some money, and you're fine. So you just come running back in. The boss still has all the damage you dealt him the first time, so I'd shoot him a little bit more, and then he kills me. Then I just come running back in, shoot him a little bit more, he kills me, and I started to realize there were no real penalties for dying in this game. And not only were there no penalties, but the other guy was still just as hurt, so I could just attrition him to death by just throwing clones of myself, like some kind of fucked up version of the Prestige, like sending magicians out after him until finally one of them beats him.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I think we've lost something in modern gaming by the fact that there really are no penalties for dying.
Yeah.
You remember that tension you would feel playing Earthbound, and you had a lot of money on you, and you didn't want to lose it, and then Earthbound had that thing where you'd lose hit points over time, so if you could take mortal damage and still heal yourself before you died.
Yeah.
And or you try and finish the fight because whenever you kill the guy, like your hit points would stop ticking away, and there was a real tension there, like a real amount of stress, like oh shit, I'm gonna lose all my money, I can't die. I know that it makes games easier and more approachable not to have any penalties for death, but I think there's something that was lost along the way.
Definitely, yeah. If you've got the very real like chance to, I mean, have a very serious punisher of, having to use up a lot more time or even waste it redoing everything you've just done. Yeah, there's a certain tension there. Ugh, yeah, but man, those games. I think it's great, that people are doing that now. But yeah, like you said, it kind of cheapens the. There would be times in games where if Resurrection doesn't have enough of a like an incentive against it, that I would just run and jump off to determine. Like Portal. For
Yeah.
example, you're like, can I make that jump? And you just run and try it rather than like calculating it.
Right.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely something there for that. Although I do think it's overall an improvement that there are ways to I don't know, yeah, like cheat death, because we have too many games competing for our time at this point that if it was one game then that would be fine, but man, you know,
Death has lost its sting. Now one genre of games that really does it right, I think, are MOBAs. We talked about that. How like Here's a Storm. If you die when you're low level, you come back pretty quickly, and it's okay. You can make some mistakes and kind of feel it out. Like let's say you've never played that character before, but if you
yeah,
die towards the end of the game, you're out of the game for like 60, 70 seconds. That's a game changer. It really punishes you. So you start to learn to be more cautious, and death starts to have a penalty. So it's a game that kind of gives you an increasing penalty for dying. So like the first time, first one's free, but if you keep doing it, it's going to start to hurt.
yeah, I think that's good too, and that kind of happens with like like MOBAs for example. You die right away and it's like, ah man, I got ganked. It's a new team, I wasn't really sure, they're really hyper aggressive. I'm back in 5 seconds. But then over time, it's like it becomes really bad. You're like, I really do not want to die. And the funny thing is, their lethality scales up though. So like, it's at the first you got to really get caught out to die. Really, you
Yeah.
can pretty much just walk back to the towers and be fine. But man, like once the lethality scales up, and then the penalty for death scales up too, then man, it becomes like this tension. It's really cool. I like that model.
Another death mechanic I really admire is in the card game Sentinels of the Multiverse, where normally during your turn you can play a card, use a power. You get two things you get to do. So you can really help
Mhm.
out. But if your character gets killed, you still get to help out. You get to do one thing. You turn the card over, and he's got like one thing. Maybe like allow another player to play a card, or allow another player to heal 2 hit points. You have some kind of way that you're still invested in the game, but the stakes are
Yeah.
still high enough that you feel nervous about dying, so the fear's there. But you're not so penalized. It's just like, all right, you're dead. Please leave. Like in the remember the episode of Community where they're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and Chang's
Yeah.
character gets killed, and it's like, Chang, I'll have to ask you for your character sheet. And he's like, no, and he like hands over his sheet and like slowly walks away, and it's playing like the sad music, and then he kind of fades away. Like they make him leave the
Yeah.
table. Like you ever play a D&D game where like, sorry Jeremiah, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave, and you just have to go home. Like whatever you had planned for that night's over. You're dead. So like you can have death penalties that are too serious, but games that still let you be invested in, even after your character's dead. I think that's a really interesting mechanic.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean it's a fine line. Like I think that, and developers I think pour enough thought into this, but like allowing you to, I don't know. I mean, I think they did it well in, I mean, like Prince of Persia. There's also another one where when they redid it. Have you played the one where you've got like the princess who's in a fight with her dad, and the mechanic is basically like she catches you and pulls you back up like ghostly. Have you played that? It's on PlayStation, Xbox.
No.
It's just called Prince of Persia, and that's all it says on the front. And he's got like a metal like gauntlet, and like uses it to like kind of break fall himself. Anyway, that plot's really fun, and you can't die in there. Like if you start to go down, she'll catch you, and then teleport you back to where you were. So it's like the Sands of Time, but even more forgiving,
Mm-hmm.
because you don't have to actually push the button. So you actually cannot die. But I still had a great time with that game. Because in the combat you would still get hurt quite a bit, but yeah, you just couldn't die. So I think I don't know. I don't know. They did that very well, I think, in general. But then there's like the Game Genie era, man. You remember that? Like you could get the God mode, and you put God mode on there, and like if you have no penalty for taking hits, it's just not even a fun game anymore. I don't, people used to play Doom like that all the time, on God mode, and just run
Yeah.
through, or Wolfenstein. I was
Yeah, I
like, what are
never
you
got the.
doing? It's not
BT was
fun.
big on that. He'd always use all the cheat codes because he'd be like, "Oh, I'm just running it. I want to see what all the game has to offer before I take it back." And this is
Yeah,
before YouTube, where you could just watch the endings online. And I remember thinking, like, how is that even fun? Like, the whole point of the game is to have some kind of threat of failure, and that's kind of what the
yeah,
death penalties were for.
yeah. It's like my favorite quote again from uh, the Iliad movie, Troy, from the movie, and he
not
goes like
from
this.
not
Achilles,
from the book.
no, Achilles says something to, in the book, Achilles actually falls in love with the priestess, but in the movie, this is Brad Pitt says, "I'll tell you a secret, something they don't teach you in your temple. The gods envy us. They envy us because we're mortal, because any moment might be our last. Everything's more beautiful because we're doomed. You will never be lovelier than you are now." And that idea of like fatality being like something that sweetens things is really just existential philosophy.
Right.
And like knowing that there's an end to even to a game, like you're playing a game and knowing that it's going to end. I mean, there's been times where I'm getting to the end and I'm actually anxious to not have it end. Like what's that game that I totally stole from you? Yeah, that's right, Bravely Default.
Yes.
Where like you delay the ending because you don't want that experience to be done, right?
But
Like,
that can
but
blow up in
eventually,
your face because you might loan the game to a friend and he'll lose it and you'll never get to see what the ending was.
a bad friend, not like a regular friend, but a
Yeah,
bad
just like
friend.
a terrible friend. Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I want to keep you on track there. Yeah, I mean, I think that like that's a bad friend. No, no, I think that that knowing that looms overhead, but having some control over like when your experience is going to end is important. Like I think that way it lets people stretch things out. That's why I like DLC now. That like if I want to stretch out an experience, like let's say like if I love Skyrim and I beat all the original content, and I'm like I don't want the experience to be over. I don't want the death of this of this character, at least as far as I'm concerned, because I'll never play him again. You get the DLC to extend that experience. And or like in like you did on Bravely Default, you get to the steps of the last area, and then you're like, oh, I'm gonna make sure I get 100% completion on everything else. That's
Yeah.
sort of like the same thing. This idea that death is the permanent end to your experience through that narrative, and that this is that's kind of the same thing.
Yeah, tying it
But
into existentialism is really profound because this idea that nothing lasts forever, and if it does last forever, it kind of loses its savor. Like, I can't
mm,
imagine like not to take it too theological again, but the idea of eternity, like we can't wrap our heads around that, and I can't imagine any kind of heaven where I wouldn't eventually get sick of it because just forever is so long. I can't think of anything I'd want to be doing forever. So like this idea of transience, this idea of a limited amount of time, like it adds value to it. It's like simple
mhm.
economics. The more the less supply, the higher the demand. I mean, Nintendo knows that lesson all too well with their amiibos. But just the idea of like, if our lives are finite, they're valuable. If our relationships are going to end someday, we value them more. If a game is going to end, it becomes all the better while we're playing it. That's why some games that
Yeah, and
don't
it's a
have an ending,
simple.
that just have like an endless, like after you beat the game, you can keep playing them, we lose interest because it's just like, well, it's just going to go on forever now. There's really no point.
Yeah, it's like the psychological principle of scarcity, right? Like for a limited time only will increase your sales because it becomes more valuable. And also like if you choose to spend 2 day or no a week down here of your summer, that means something to me because you only get 3 months. But if you were unemployed and you were gonna live and you were immortal, then it would have less value. I'd be like, oh cool, he eventually came and spent time with me. But it's not
Right.
like you're giving up a whole lot to do it.
Right. Exactly. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's this weird idea of the way different games handle death really changes your experience with them. And if your character comes back to life, or even story-wise, because when Lara Croft dies on Tomb Raider, she's not dead in the canon. It just never happened. We zoom back to before that happened, and we try it again in this kind of bizarre Groundhog's Day kind of scenario.
Yeah.
But in games like Chrono Trigger or Mass Effect 2 or these other games where your hero actually comes back to life, like it really changes the rules for the stakes, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, and whenever you beat the game, like you said, it's kind of this bizarre Groundhog Day. You don't feel okay. Have you ever beaten a game like a really difficult game, like in One Life or something? There's something about that that's just qualitatively different than whenever you beat a game that yeah, in which you've respawned 1,000 times. Like whenever I beat Bioshock, I love that game, but Bioshock Infinite even, I love that game, but it doesn't feel like I'm the same guy that started the journey, right? Like it
Right.
just doesn't, to me at least. Like at least qualitatively, right? I can abstract it in my head and be like, okay, yeah, this is still me, but just it's not the same as if you beat it. If you really challenge yourself to like beat a hardcore mode game, that's why they exist, is because they're sweeter. You get
Yeah,
those
do you
people
remember
like
when people would play Diablo 3 and they put it on like insane hardcore mode where if you die, you're
yeah,
dead permanently, and it becomes like a whole different game. Like suddenly you're scared of everything.
yeah. Yeah, like I watched a. You can watch. This was up on one of the gaming sites. I can't remember which one, but it had the entire playthrough, and it's like you can skip around and see how he looks, how he addresses certain bosses and certain obstacles. And when you do that, you see that like he's so cautious. I think he was playing the Demon Hunters when I watched, because he kept doing that little, the
Vault.
multi-shot basically where he shoots it out. Yeah, and he'd vault back and he'd just run around back there forever, and he would kite for the entire map. Like just run around having him chase him in W, and he wouldn't get close enough to do anything but that. No, not W. Sorry, I'm thinking here's now. But multi-shot, run back. He wouldn't get close enough to even do any of his other abilities for the longest time until he was absolutely sure he could kill all the enemies.
Mhm.
Yeah, it adds this sort of like high intensity to it.
Ninja Gaiden for the NES was a game
Ugh.
that really was punishing, and I never could beat it as a kid. I got really far, but I think the last level, like the last boss, I could never get past him.
Yeah.
So I got out on emulator once, and I started playing it. And before the boss fight started, I just did a save state in case it went poorly, and it did. And I just reload from the save state, try the boss fight again, die, reload, try it again, until I eventually learned the boss's attack pattern and was able to beat it. And I was like, I beat Ninja Gaiden, but then like deep down I was like, no, I didn't. I
Nah.
I just kind of brute forced my way, just like with BioShock 1. I just kind of brute forced my way through it until eventually one of my clones managed to do it.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because that's like one of those infamous games, right? Whenever you say something like, what was the other one? There's one I always ask. There's two.
Battletoads.
Battletoads. That's it. Yeah. I said, have you beaten Battletoads? And then because like you're kind of someone else is like, dude, I'm a super hardcore gamer, and I'm like, yeah, me too, man. And then do you almost want to test each other? And like mine was where it was like what was that question? Like, okay, did you beat Battletoads? Yes. Whoa, really? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, me too. What about Ninja Gaiden? And if they're like yes, then I'm like, oh man, I didn't. That's awesome. But then I'm like, wait, did you use an emulator? And like, yeah. And I'm like, okay, that doesn't count. Like
Right.
nobody that I know takes that seriously whenever you do that, because death doesn't hold the same punishment as it does in any other
Yeah. Even though
scenario.
like if it had been your first play, like I beat the boss, I didn't use any cheat codes or anything. Like I figured out how to beat him, but because I didn't beat him on that first life or the first 3 lives or whatever it would have been, like it's just not the same. Like there's something about like having that limitation, having that game over screen that really adds value to the accomplishment.
Yeah, which is hilarious because like it's not like the first time that you've ever played the game. So extrapolated over time, you are basically doing the same thing, right?
Yeah,
Save state is just at the beginning of the game.
saving time of going through all the other parts of the level again and again and again. I'm not making the
Yeah.
game any easier, the difficulty's not changing, but because I'm saving myself that punishment, it becomes less awesome.
Yeah, exactly. Um, yeah, it's funny. I think a good medium is kind of like again like I'm a fanboy of Tomb Raider. That game was fucking awesome, which I did not expect, but it
Mm.
was amazing. Speaking of which, the new one's coming out soon, which is nice. But I like that because they showed like a very uncomfortable death, right? That almost sort of like in a Punisher, because you're like, oh man, and then like you watch, or then you go. There's a small like kind of dark point, and then a reloading screen, and then it pulls you back a ways, and you get to do whatever it is again. I like that, like where they pull you back quite a ways, and
Yeah.
they make you like they punish you a little bit.
And they punish you emotionally by making you watch Lara Croft just die in a grisly fashion. Same thing with
Yeah,
the Last of Us, like when those instant kill zombies would kill you, and you have to watch yourself just get torn apart as they bite your
yeah,
neck or whatever. You're like, oh, like that adds tension to it. Like there needs to be some kind of penalty. Like I feel like BioShock, the penalty wasn't enough to where I wasn't disincentivized from caring anymore. I was just like,
hmm
all right, I'll just keep dying until I beat it. There needs
yeah,
to be
yeah,
some level of penalty to where you actually do feel that kind of anxiety when you're near death. Or like Fire Emblem in that franchise, your characters die, they stay dead. And the
yeah,
newest Fire Emblem game had a casual mode where they would come back at the end of the map, and that just made the game. You think it would make it more fun because it's less like stressful, but it made the game less fun because nothing had consequences anymore. Death has to have
yeah.
consequences, is what I'm saying.
Dude, yeah, dude, the part. Oh man, that's what one of the things I love about the game. Like you load it up and you're looking at like the battle and you're like, let me see. I'm gonna put my A team in here, and that had like a real, consequence. Because if you put your A team in, like the very best characters that you're really invested in, and one of them dies, holy crap! But you only bring in your A team when the stakes are high, right?
Right.
So it's this cool like most maps, like if you play a chess game, for example, over and over again, it's not like one becomes more epic than the other unless you're playing for a championship. But even still, you have nothing to permanently lose, right? You just like
Right. You'll get your queen back in the next game.
exactly, yeah. Whereas this, it's like, holy shit! Like, oh man, that's one of the reasons why I like that game so much is you become personally connected with some of the characters, or at least emotionally
Yeah.
connected to them. It sells you a narrative on each person, so you really feel like a commander of a battlefield. Where I've never commanded troops as a captain or an officer in the military. I was enlisted, but like it feels like it'd probably be the same thing where it's like, man, I'm gonna send these people and they might
Yeah.
die.
I used to do that
Oh.
myself when I was a kid, when I played Warcraft 2 or StarCraft. I would,
Yeah.
because there were no
Yeah.
there were no penalties really. Like if a footman dies, you can make another one. So I'd start to pick out footmen and like pretend they were real people and be like, I played a lot more conservatively because I just imagine as the commander I'd have to write letters to their families after every fight. I'd be like, oh, I'm sorry that Sergeant Lothar did not make it back from the North campaigns, but I really wanted to hold that gold mine a couple extra seconds, and I had a lot of footmen back home, and I was getting close to the supply cap, so I had to free up some resources. Like I just felt like an asshole if I like. So I actually had to create like imaginary disincentives to be like more cautious with my troops' lives. I try and like get through every game with zero casualties, and I was all very cautiously encroaching forward. So it really does it changes the way you look at the game if like the way Fire Emblem does it, where you have to really weigh the risks. Like I want to put my Pegasus Knight there, but there are some archers, and if they get close enough, she's doomed. So is it worth the risk?
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. I remember that about you. Like we had we'd line them up and like we'd have a public execution. Speaking of death, where like if we had to kill someone, like
Oh yeah, because of lazy peasants, right?
yeah, because like you're playing the game and like one of your peasants would just stop collecting gold, and maybe it's because of some error that we made,
Yeah,
because
like,
me and Dave played this game together.
like that was back before you had like an icon that tells you when they're not doing anything. So sometimes they'd build
Yeah.
a farm and then you would just forget about them, and you come back and you just be sitting by the farm, just like looking around, and we're like, you lazy piece of trash.
And so we'd stop the whole campaign. Like, I mean, the game's still going. So, like, the enemy's, building stuff. But we'd be like, everyone line up. And all the peasants we'd line all our peasants up in a row. And have them watch, and then put all of our military people on the other side.
Yeah, we have a
and
whole row of elven archers just like facing them down.
Yeah, like it's like a firing squad. We'd have them all line up, and then we'd have the peasant walk down that line through all the peasants as a walk of shame, and then stop in front of the firing squad, and then we'd be like, "This is what happens if you ever stop working." And then we'd fire on the peasant and kill him, and be like, "Now back to work."
We increased morale that way, and we play it together, right? Because it was before multiplayer games were a big thing. So one of us would be playing, the other person would be scanning for lazy peasants, and as soon as we see one, sir, lazy peasant, and then we'd have another execution.
And that little guy was not breaking death. I'll tell you that much.
Oh my
He
god,
was,
we were that's disturbing.
That's pretty messed up. Yeah.
That's
My
the
son
kind
did
of
that.
behavior that they profile for. Like, oh, that kid's gonna be a serial killer.
It is, man. Like if I heard about that, I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'm writing that down. That's pretty fucked up.
Keep an eye on that.
We were like 13, and we were like having firing squads, like ritualistic
Yeah, to
murder.
increase the morale of the other peasants, like to make them.
That's like Russia. We were Stalin.
Yeah, we would decimate our peasants.
Yeah, we went into them, and we'd do it in a public fashion. Oh my God. At least we didn't torture them over time.
Oh man, remember? But the Dawn of War, they made that a mechanic, right? There was a faction that could execute your
National
troops
Guard.
and make everyone else, fight harder. So we were just ahead of the curve when it comes to RTSs.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh man, that's hilarious. But yeah, I mean, we giving like your people narratives is kind of what we were just talking about in Fire Emblem. Is that it makes their lives more meaningful, which kind of increases the punishment of death of those characters.
Who was it that said one death is a tragedy, 1,000 deaths is a statistic?
Yeah, exactly.
So you get to the end of the game and it's like, here are your casualties. You lost like 400 troops. You're like, oh, whatever.
No,
but
that's
giving stories like in Fire Emblem where you have like 20 armies and you lose one of them, you lose one unit, then it becomes a tragedy.
Yeah, have you heard about that? There was a philosopher who okay, so back in like the 50s, do you remember when the Cold War crisis was?
Yeah.
It was the 50s or something like that.
Late
60s.
late 40s through the 80s.
Okay, so when that was going on and people were talking about the very real chance that we could get into a nuclear war with Cuba, I believe, or that was a Cuban Missile Crisis. So maybe it was Cuba, maybe it was, I can't remember if it was Russia or Cuba, but this one of these moments where like the kids were drilling to get under their desk to somehow save you from nuclear fallout. I don't know,
Yeah.
but whatever.
You have to get in the fridge to be safe from nuclear fallout. Dust doesn't do it.
Yeah, maybe dig a hole as fast as you can. But anyway, during one of these points, the president had his basically there's a number of buttons. It's not one big red button, but he basically had his finger on a big red button. Imagine it that way, because he can make it launch at any point. There was this philosopher who said, that doesn't work, because he might be willing to nuke people very far away, many of which are peasants, or people who are at least non-combatants. And he not really thinking about it. He's not putting in the thought that he would if he had to line each one of those people up and slit their throat, right? Like personally, with a hand, with a knife, right? There's this disconnection with the death at that point. And so what he said was, what if we take the nuclear codes that he needs and put it in the heart of someone, and he has to cut out that person's heart and open it up for the nuclear codes, right? He has to personally do that with a knife. Would he be so eager to push the button? And the idea is no, that you wouldn't. And honestly, the crazy part is they were like, okay, that's real cool, philosopher, but would you be willing to do it? And he goes, yeah, of course, yeah, I'd be definitely willing to do it. And the philosopher's son said the same thing. He was like, yeah, I'd be willing to be that guy, but he had to cut it out of my own heart. But yeah, I mean, death, the kind of the weight that is put on death in video games in real life is kind of a consequence of like what meaning that it has to you and what consequence it has over your own life. Pushing a button, not seeing anyone die, and like winning a war is easy.
Sure. We as a species, we have a sort of a natural distaste towards violence against other humans, like if it's hand to hand. But the further removed we can get from it, like once you can press a button or like fire a drone or launch a nuke, it becomes a lot easier. Like people talk about they say that the 20th century was the bloodiest century in all of human history. That's not true. We did have World War I and II, and we had Pol Pot, and we had Stalin. We had a lot of deaths. But Genghis Khan by himself, like just the Genghis Khan's actions, 40 million people. Back then, that was 11% of the world were killed by Genghis Khan. And a lot of that was it wasn't by missile or by machine gun or by gas. Like that was scimitar, it was bow and arrow, it was like just lining people up and cutting throats. Just he was a very efficient engine of death, and any squeamishness we might have now in the modern days, like he was totally fine getting his hands dirty. So it's actually, people think that our species is getting more and more violent, but actually the taboo against violence is getting better, and we're getting less violent over time. So that's a I don't know, an optimistic way of looking at it, but it beats this like we're going to hell in a handbasket view so many people have.
Yeah, that's pretty fucked up, man. This got pretty dark pretty quick, dude. Thanks.
Well, it's about death. I don't know what you were expecting.
I don't know, man. Easter. It's supposed to have a good message to it.
The good news is Jesus died, so we all get an extra life. Isn't that the Easter message? Or there's a pagan goddess and there's bunnies and eggs? I don't know. Point is, death in games needs to have consequences, or it just becomes an annoyance.
Yeah, and I do feel like it's got. I mean, I wouldn't know this better than I guess someone who's analyzing the market, but I kind of feel like the hardcore gamer. I don't even know if I qualify as one of those anymore, actually, because I don't know if I'd sit through an entire playthrough of a game again. But like you weren't willing to do it, for example, for Bravely Default. Like playing the whole thing again.
Oh yeah. So, no, once you've got 80 hours invested in a game like Bravely Default, like you don't have that in you anymore.
Yeah.
And we just don't have the time we used to have.
Yeah, it's competition of resources. Like, did you know one of the so there's two things that predict divorce. Okay, like after you basically you run all these different kind of combinations and weights of certain variables, right? Like this is a regression, and then you find the fits that are the best, right? So the models that have the highest prediction value, right? And the ones that had the highest weights, the two variables that were the most predictive, and in fact by themselves had the most predictive power without adding anything else, was two things. One, your commitment to marriage, not to each other, but to the institute of marriage. Okay, so not committed to one another. That actually was not a predictor. And the second one was quality of alternatives.
And that's where having all
That's
these video games and Steam sales comes up,
yeah.
is that I've got so many other things besides Bravely Default vying for my attention, and my even with 3 months of summer break, I'm not going to get caught up. So do I
Yeah.
have the time to like start over from scratch again? But at the
I
same
mean,
time, there needs to be some kind of punishment, or else again, like death just becomes an annoyance, and we have the Mass Effect or the BioShock problem.
yeah, too true. Like I think it's something that a lot of people don't put. Well, actually, they do probably put a lot of thought into, but it feels like some games don't quite get it. Well, you can't get it right for everyone, I guess. So some games seem to be a little too lenient. Like you lose loss of. So one of the best things about video games is they have strong narratives, right? Like in a movie, like you're invested, sure, if you want to be. In a video game, you're very often invested, even if you don't want to be, because like you're playing the character, you don't want you to die as the player, and therefore that some of that leaks over, or at least may bleed over into the value of the narrative character dying. And so I think that in these games, like if you're dying over and over, like you lose less of that like fear for your own life and less of your kind of you want the well-being of yourself. You're very invested in it. You lose some of that, and I think some of that leaks over to your narrative character as well. Like you don't really care as much for them, because I feel like I don't feel like I know that for sure in psychology that two people who go through a stressful experience are more likely to have affinity for each other, both male and female, like it's opposite sex and same sex. So better friends, or sexual attraction with females if you're male and you're heterosexual. That occurs, and so I wonder if that is also with a fake character, like a narrative. Like me and you got through this. Friggin', what's that guy's name?
Joel?
DeWitt or Booker
Oh
DeWitt
yeah, Booker DeWitt
from Bioshock Infinite. I wonder if I had played that on hardcore, if I wouldn't be more likely to associate with that person.
You know what Mario, the more modern Mario games have done that really is a good compromise, where death still has a sting, but if you just suck at the game and you want to move on to the next level, you can do it. So the new Mario games, like Mario 3D Land or whatever, like the ones that are platformers but more modern, some of the levels are really hard, like precise jumps, kind of Super Meat Boy level, like precision required to beat them.
Okay.
And if you die, you start over from the beginning. It's like it's got that consequence. But if you keep dying, because Mario games, you rack up a lot of extra lives, right? So let's say you die like 5 times in a row, the game will give you a little block, and it's like a golden Tanuki suit, and it's invincible, and it can fly for as long as you want. But you look like an idiot while you're wearing it. You're basically like a big golden stupid raccoon. And so they're like, okay, listen, buddy, you suck. So if you just want to God mode your way through this level, we're not going to judge you, but you do have to wear this stupid raccoon suit, and you're going to feel like an idiot. And so it's kind of like wearing the cone of shame, like for a dog who won't stop like biting himself.
Yeah.
You just feel like an idiot. And you're like, ah. And so there's this real sting of like, no, I'm gonna fucking beat the level without your golden Tanuki suit. Fuck you, Nintendo. But
I like that.
But it's there if you want it, so you can put on the shame suit and move on to the next level. But the game's gonna make fun of you.
I like that. That's an inventive way to deal with that, because like it's the same thing of like let's say I'm doing like I'm in gym class, right, PE, and I go to like climb the rope in front of everyone, and I fall, and then the coach will be like, all right, man, you could be done if you want. And if I do walk away, then there's like a public shaming kind of thing going on, and I kind of want to perform in front of a group, and so I jump up there and I climb, I try again as hard as I can. And so with this, it's kind of the same thing. It's this idea of like shaming, not harmless shaming.
Yeah, because there's nobody else that sees it but you feel stupid. Or another one they do sometimes is they'll have this thing that says, oh, you've been failing this a while. Press this button to watch Luigi beat the level so you can see how it's done. And then you have to watch like stupid Luigi beat it with ease, and you're like, oh, okay, I should have jumped there. I see what he did. But then you feel dumb because it's fucking Luigi. He just showed you up. So these little ways of like making you feel stupid, but also like helping you get out of a trouble if you need to.
Yeah, or one of the inventive ways of early on of people doing this was Ninja Gaiden, the Xbox type era. Where,
oh yeah, I remember that.
Whenever you go to easy mode, like you're playing the regular mode and you're fighting.
First of all, you have to unlock easy mode by losing a lot, right?
So let's say you lose to the same ninja 2 or 3 times, which is going to happen in the game at least one time in your career, and then it says, hey, looks like things are pretty tough. Do you want to go to easy mode? And there's Ninja Gaiden is known for being very difficult and attracting people who want to beat difficult games, because that game, the narrative's okay, it's okay, but that's not the point. The gameplay is the whole point of the game, and the gameplay is fucking hard. So if you don't like fucking hard gameplay, you're not gonna play the game. And so it has a tradition of attracting those people. So if you say yes, then you're not really, in it for the same Ninja Gaiden experience or Ninja Gaiden experience that you have before, or that their fan base or their idea of the true Ninja Gaiden gamer. So what they do is you strap on a little pink scarf on your arm. It's like tied around and it flitters around beautifully, basically. So so that if you ever take a screenshot or upload your video, do a let's play, everyone knows. Or like if someone comes over to your game and they're like, "Oh, what are you playing?" And I was like, "What's this pink thing?" And you're like, "Yeah, I'm a ninja dog." And after every level, there's no rating. It just says ninja dog. And for the whole game, like the second that you do that, it ruins the rest of the game. So it really motivates you to try to learn the system. I learned it. I beat the game. Did I beat the game? Yeah, I beat the game with straight up. Because once I saw that I had a pink one, I was like, nope, reloading an old one. That's not happening. So I like the inventive ways to make death more punishing, I guess.
Yeah, it's a fine line because you want to make it punishing without turning the person off entirely to the game where they don't want to play anymore. Like I never finished Super Meat Boy because I just got to the point where it just wasn't worth it to me. I was like, I just don't want to put the time involved to get past this level.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I like Super Meat Boy though, but yeah, there's a point where I was like, yeah, you've reached my upper limit on this, but yeah. Anyway, so I think that was a pretty good episode. If we're done.
Yeah.
Pontificating about death and breaking death in games.
Yes, breaking death, coming back from the dead. Yeah. He is risen. Mario has returned amongst us with another extra life.
Behold, his overalls are pierceth. But anyway, yeah, good. Then I guess we'll move on to the feedback session. All right, this is the feedback section where we're going to be talking about our interactions with the community. Sorry, I was pulling up a webpage. So, welcome to the feedback section. Thank you for everyone who interacted with us. We always appreciate it, both on the Game Theory Podcast Facebook page and our Twitter. I really appreciate it. First of all, I'll talk about Twitter. We had I kind of posted something out about Sonic, right? Mm-hmm. Pretty controversial. We got blown up. There's a podcast called Hypocritics Podcast, and it's like some people sitting around basically talking about nerdy stuff. Literally, this is their tagline: for nerds in a room. That room just happens to have a mic and a computer. And there you go. They do a podcast out of Omaha, Nebraska. They're good guys. I've interacted with them a couple times on Twitter, listened to them 2 or 3 times. And yeah, so basically they were talking about the fact that like some of our listeners who also interacted with us, they're kind of curious about thinking that actually Sonic does have some legit draw. There's some things that do make it really interesting. He was saying that in particular, he says the whole time, or whoever was running behind, because it's 4 guys. He says, the whole time I was listening, I was like, did we play the same Sonic games? I played Sonic 2 over the weekend and had fun. So he went to go test this theory of ours of, play it again soon and see what you think. And he said, basically I was just like, okay, well, how much of that do you think was nostalgia? What's your take on that, man? Like, what is it that you think kind of made it still feel like fun? And, he was like, yeah, nostalgia's part of it, basically. But I think designing the levels to reward for speed rather than punish would be key. But overall, he was introducing his son to it, so he said maybe that's what did it. So it's so difficult, man. Sometimes we don't know why we're having fun. You know what I mean? It takes a second to reflect on it. And
yeah, we
we're
very rarely know why we do anything, so it's interesting.
Yeah, a lot of people have studied attribution, like how we attribute things in psychology, like why we're feeling good, why we're feeling bad, and we are fucking awful at it. So, at figuring this stuff out. But we're great at coming up with reasons, but not always causal reasons that come out when we test those theories. So, yeah, good times.
Yeah, so we had a couple interesting posts on the Facebook group as well. Tommy posted it's teenager post number 18776. Says, a shooting star is actually someone driving off Rainbow Road. I'll never look at shooting stars the same way again, having read that.
Yeah. Yeah, another one was, I kind of think we hinted at the idea that Sonic was one of the things that paved the way into like running games. Did we talk about that? Or was that something we just thought about, or that I thought about?
Yeah, I don't know if the mic was running when we talked about that, but yeah. Are you talking about the that speed game Sean was talking about?
Yeah, Speedrunner, I think. Yeah, Speedrunner. He was saying that like it rewards running fast and not being punished. And I was curious about like where the camera is, because one of the things I thought might improve it is having an over-shoulder camera where you can see something really far in the distance, so that you've got the reaction time there, but you still get the sensation of running quickly. You know.
A
Um,
lot of the modern Sonic games do that.
Yeah, and because I was so busy, I didn't even look it up. I meant to, look up a YouTube Let's Play kind of thing.
Well, one thing he
Just to
says, the map kind of loops, so you do the same map a few times, so you can kind of memorize where the jumps are going to be and how the path goes.
yeah, I like that. That's fun. Um, yeah, familiarity obviously lends to speed, hence why speedrunners play things over and over and over again.
hmm
So,
We had
yeah.
a comment from Paul. He says I love your game ideas and improvements on the survival horror episode, and I have a comment about alphas coming from a game development standpoint. The reason many, can't say all, is I don't know everyone's motivations. Devs charge for alpha and betas because they want people who are playing and testing that are really interested and invested in the game. If you gave out your game for free during testing, you could potentially get a bunch of people who aren't really interested and will give you lots of crappy feedback because of it. Another reason is that if you have an online multiplayer game, you want people to trickle in over time so you don't crush your servers with a rush of people, and slow growth helps
Yeah,
in
yeah, yeah.
creating a nurturing community for new players instead of a rapid influx of people. They're just out to kill noobs. So yeah, those are some interesting points. I never thought of that, like the kind of controlling the amount of people who come in through an economic incentive, and also the idea of investment. Like if you've paid something, then you're more invested in the game's success than if you're just trying it out for free.
Yeah. I mean, I think you were more critical than I was on this, but I think both you and I are on the same page that this is really good for development. But I think maybe you were arguing from the point that it may not be the best thing for us
I don't think we
gamers.
should have to still. I still think we should have to pay full price, like $50 to play H1Z1 or however much JT paid. It just seems like too much. Like maybe a $10 price point to get on the alpha or something.
Yeah, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, like a scaling fee, because
Yeah.
we are providing a service for them, and on the other hand, we are getting an early glimpse on it, which is more and more valuable in like the social media days, where if you have the first information, you've got more power. So I get it, but yeah, I can see your criticism too. Um, yeah. Other than that, there's um, yeah, talking about people who are so Byron, one of our listeners who interacts with us quite a bit, was talking about trying to catch up. I think that's a big part of our audience. People, no, I don't think I've actually looked into it on Libsyn on our podcast like provider, and a
Mhm.
lot of people like kind of skip around or catch up. There'd be binge listens, and I get it, man. There's a lot of content, so I don't blame anyone out there.
Yeah, we're
Appreciate you guys
putting
for sticking with
putting
us.
2 hours a week. It's hard to stay caught up. So
Yeah,
pretty normal.
but yeah, it's overall, man. I'm always pleased with how many people interact with us. Every week on the Facebook page, and Twitter is even starting to get a little better. Yeah, so yeah, keep it coming, guys. We really appreciate it. Did we get iTunes reviews? I don't think we did.
No new
No.
iTunes reviews
Okay.
this week, so that's hopefully now we're getting an influx of new listeners. Some of them who haven't reviewed us yet can jump in on that because it really does help.
Yeah, but I get it. Like everyone else, I haven't been really great about sending an iTunes review on all the podcasts I listen to, but I've gotten better at it now that I see on the other side of things, like how much they help. So yeah, if you guys can help us out, we really appreciate it.
We did get an email from Joseph. He sent us a crack.com article called 6 Hilarious Ways Game Designers Are Screwing Over Pirates. It's pretty great. Like Arma 2, they'll slowly turn your soldier into a bird if you're pirating the game. You'll just kind of slowly turn into a bird over time. Just fly away. And Far Cry 4, like this thing where they trick the people who are pirating it into outing themselves by like through some trickery in the game. They're like, "Oh, why is this happening?" It's like, now we know you're a pirate, and they like come after you
Yeah, yeah.
on their forums. The Talos principle would trap some of their players in an elevator. You just couldn't get out of the elevator, and then the forums would be like, "Elevator doesn't work. There's a bug on the elevator." And it's just like, okay, you guys are pirates. We can tell because you're stuck in the elevator. Um, if you're playing Alan Wake, it's like a psychological horror game. Like your character will slowly turn into a pirate while you're playing it. Like you get like a stupid patch with like a skull and crossbones on it, and like you have to start looking like a pirate because you pirated the game.
Yeah,
And
I like that.
Sims 4, when you pirated it, like you know how when you like take a shower or whatever, like it would get all pixelated and kind of
Yeah.
censor. It would just start to censor the whole screen, so like everything would be censored. It's just all all glitches. So it was pretty funny. I like it when the piracy is a huge problem for gaming
Yeah.
industry, and finding like funny ways to like screw over the pirates without making everyone else pay for it is always a helpful way of stopping
Yeah,
it.
'cause, I mean, the thing is, it's kind of like we saw this in Napster, right? For anyone old enough to see the beginning of the MP3 like piracy era, right? That's still going on. It was this little. It's kind of like a uTorrent or a BitTorrent of any kind, but it was specific to music. So you just type in whatever music you want, and you get the MP3, download on a computer. There you go. That was like the beginning of big,
File
like large
sharing.
scale piracy. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So and there's no winning in that scenario. If you're like Metallica came out as a band and they were one of the first people to say F Napster, basically, right? Like,
Mhm.
they're bad people. There's no winning in this, like, because if you act classy and you're like, yeah, go ahead and pirate away, then everyone just pirates your stuff and you don't make any money. If you call them out, then you're a real douche. And if you don't say anything, then you're contributing to the problem because this is getting out of control, right? So I
Right.
think they're doing it right this way because if the company comes out like EA or something and like actively like pays for people to find these people and sue them or seize their assets or whatever, you're a dick, right? It's kind of like, whoa, dude, come on, that doesn't you know the
Right.
Punisher has to be big enough where
Or
people
if
are
they do
afraid of it.
something like always on, like online mode, where it's like to prevent piracy, SimCity 4 is now always online, and like that
Yeah,
sucks for people who don't have a good internet connection. So you
yeah,
have to find a way to like punish the pirates without punishing everybody else. And I've talked about this before, the game Video Game Tycoon, where if you pirate it, eventually, because the Video Game Tycoon is a sim where you're a video game company trying to make video games, and if you pirated it, then they make it so video game like software pirators will pirate your game that you're making in the game and make it so you can't turn a profit and go out of business. And that was just hilarious because their forums would be filled with people saying like, "Oh, I can't. How the heck do you beat pirates, man? This game is really hard. I can't turn a profit." And they're all like, "Yeah, it sucks, doesn't it? Pirates are the worst." Just like trolling them on their forums.
yeah. I remember that. That's good, man, because then you punish only the pirators, and they also get social shaming, which is what you want your community to do is to self-police. Which we had an episode on self-policing communities, so it's important. You really need to have it, and apparently that's what they're trying to foster in League of Legends. That was actually last week news items. Riot Games reported on that at South by Southwest about their data and how they analyze it. So, or how they analyze them is how I should say it. It just sounds weird. Data's plural. Just hard to break that habit.
Yeah, super hard.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah. But otherwise, thanks for the interactions. We had quite a few this week, even though we had kind of a slow start last week. Our servers fucked up, man. So I put it out as fast as I could. Tuesday, for anyone who didn't follow the Facebook kind of discussion about that, that's what happened. It's not really normal. I get today's out on Sunday, as long as they don't goof up. So
Yeah.
sorry for anyone who had lonely commutes or didn't have our sexy voices in your ear. So, but anyway, yeah. To any new listeners, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and to any of the old ones, you guys are awesome. Keep listening. But until then, next week I was thinking about doing this, David. Talking about Anita Sarkeesian's new video because I saw a tagline of it and it looks pretty rad. So
Wow.
kind of wanted to go over it and discuss it. That's a big news item in gaming news, and we could discuss it, a whole episode on it.
Yeah, that should be interesting. It seems like she's going more in a direction that I can get behind. So I haven't seen her new video yet, but it'll be interesting to share our thoughts on it.
Yep. Yeah, more dispassionate, fair reporting is what everybody's been asking for on every side of it, probably. But so yeah, it looks like she's going that way. So good on her, man. Get away from that old bullshit you were doing. And her newer stuff seems to be getting better and better, at least in my opinion. So yeah, great. Thinking about doing that. So for anyone who wants to hear that, tune in next week. And for everyone else, I guess you're gonna have you don't care. So we'll see you some other time. Awkward sign out.